You're so stupid. Why are you so slow? You're not as good as come on, don't you just get better? Why are you so good? Not as everything. Why don't you just give up? Why don't you just give up? Why don't you just give up? So slow, so stupid.
Worthless.
I am so you'll never be as good. How about you just give up? You suck. Actually, yourself. Everything that you're gonna. How about you just out yourself and really messed up? What's the point? Why are you still doing? Can't you just do something? Anyone can do what you're doing. Why don't you better just up? Just give up.
I can't. I won't. Hey guys, I'm Rot the Jake, and welcome to Game and Think, the show that brings the lesser heard thoughts of a gamer to the front of your attention. In the last video I talked about how loneliness can add to the overall experience of a video game, but sometimes we don't have to feel lonely, and we don't want to feel lonely when we're playing a game. Sometimes there's a flip side to that feeling. So my thought for today is, how can solitude be used to enhance a game? Emotions and feelings usually have an opposite to each other. For example, happiness and sadness, anger and peace, or in today's case, loneliness and solitude. Before we enter into the episode, let's try to have a somewhat clear definition as to what solitude is, so that we can let it guide us throughout the rest of the show. As we know, loneliness is usually a mental reaction and/or decision to outward stimuli such as not having anyone around or having too many people around too often. Solitude, on the other hand, is a choice made by an individual to cut down on general interactions and spend meaningful time to his or herself. In a journal about the theory of social behavior, Christopher Long and James Averill wrote, "Solitude is often a positive state, one that may be sought rather than avoided." A more solid definition comes from dictionary.com, stating that solitude is remoteness from habitation, as of a place, absence of human activity. But to break it down simply, solitude is the willingness to be alone for positive reasons, whereas loneliness is the effect of isolation in a negative way. Solitude is a happy lonely. Before we finally dive in, I will say that any of the games I've chosen can be seen as a lonely experience as well. When I write about this stuff, I try to be objective and have a mindset that most can relate to, but as is humanity, it's marked with my own personal thoughts and feelings. Now, without further ado, let's talk about some games. Minecraft. It's hard to imagine anyone who hasn't heard of it or its hundreds of unofficial spawn. It can be very fun to play with others, but there's a certain serenity and joy that comes from playing alone, whether in creative or survival mode. Sometimes the player can just lose him or herself in the atmosphere of the night sky, torchlights, and the very relaxing music. When you allow yourself to just relax and focus on a project or wander around underground, you might even feel a weight lift off your shoulders, which is what solitude is supposed to do for you. In Minecraft, it's your world, and you can play it in whatever way you want. Your creativity in all situations comes forth from the willing isolation you put yourself in, and that creativity can become something fun or beautiful. Then there's a game like Proteus, which is pretty much like Minecraft, minus the mines and crafting. Bad analogy, but my meaning is you're put into a randomly generated world made just for you. Each beginning starts with charm as you, the explorer, open your eyes to see yourself standing in water and a little island in the near distance. As you make your trek forward, you find out that the little island is much larger than you thought it was, and it's all there for you to explore. The game could be chalked up as a simple walking simulator, but there is just a bit more to it than that. The areas are full of color and have an aesthetic similar to some Atari 2600 games. The music has a base of constant ambience that gets overlaid with different lead sound effects and melodies as you pass through different areas. It's simple, but it's supposed to be. That sense of slow building catharsis via sounds and sight feeds into solitude and makes the relaxation much more potent. But not all games have to play and look simple. Just Cause 2, despite being a very action-based game, can be a relaxing, mind-calming experience, more so after you beat the main story and gain the ability to freely roam. Part of this comes from the gorgeous scenery and the lack of restrictions on where you can go. You can gently float above the earth in your parachute, fly through the clouds in an army jet, or sail the waters in a fishing boat. It's like taking a car ride just to relax. The rather peaceful ways of traveling can even make the goal of completing the game 100% a less tedious task because the journey to the next mission is more than likely a fun one. It's a fine example of a game being more than what its genre labels it as. Next, we bring in the big guns, or clubs rather. Shadow of the Colossus. When I said earlier that the games mentioned today could be seen as examples of either loneliness or solitude, this one especially fits there. It all depends on what your state of mind is when you're playing, or even if it's your first time or not. The game is about a young man named Wanda, or Wander, trying to save his lady friend, or familial relation, or whatever. To save her, he has to travel across deserts, plains, and lakes to fight 16 Colossi. There are no minor enemies in the game to contend with, so much of a player's game time is spent listening to the panting of the horse and the environmental sounds all around. With a desaturated color palette, one could feel lonely or depressed by the scope of the world. But the game also reveals a fun trick about solitude, that you can experience it with animal companions. At home, this could be your dog or your cat, but here it's the horse. Wanda is never truly alone for most of his journey because he travels with Agro, his horse. The companionship of his faithful steed can be enough to ward off any negative emotions and allow the wonder of the world to flood the imagination. Finally, I want to mention Journey. I've talked a lot about the game already in past videos, but I haven't had a chance yet to speak about how well crafted the multiplayer is and how it adds to the game. In Journey, you start off alone and can stay alone for the whole game. Because of how it starts, the player can feel a sense of solitude because of how the goal to get to the mountain is well mixed with the beautiful scenery and moving soundtrack. But sometimes an anonymous traveler will meet up with you and you can travel together. Just like Colossus, a special bond will form, and it'll usually be an instantly strong one. But if that person leaves the game for any reason, a feeling of loneliness can wash over you in a second, becoming more powerful depending on how far you are into the journey. And the feeling of loneliness adds to the game just like how solitude and companionship do. Whatever way it happens, you still need to get to the mountain, and the feelings produced from all three possibilities make the experience more complex and deep. Solitude is a beautiful gift that we can give to ourselves, to slow down parts of our lives and let our minds catch up and rest. And through video games like what I've mentioned today, it helps us feel like we're accomplishing something physically while our minds and souls gain self-reflection and rest. No matter the color palette, the musical score, or the gameplay, Solitude is something very special that can be of great benefit to someone. And the fact that such a special gift can come from video games is a beautiful recognition of the work people put into the art form. Solitude is meant to help rest and re-stimulate the brain so it can work more efficiently with better clarity. You don't have to play a slow game to feel rest, and you don't have to play an explosive game to feel energized. You can just turn on the right game and enjoy the state of being. Taking time to oneself is something not many people get to do anymore, no matter the situation. So it's important to realize when you need to disconnect from other things and just focus on one thing that helps you relax and recharge. Solitude isn't bound by any particular rules, so take time to yourself when you need it. Disconnect and recharge. Believe me, it's worth it.